Good evening. My name is Chris Peterson. I'm the director here at the Sorenson Unity Center. Thank you all for coming tonight. The Sorenson Unity Center is within housing and neighborhood, the Division of Housing and Neighborhood Development within Community and Economic Development. And in interest of increasing civic engagement, we decided that we were going to start hosting some monthly public dialogues. And this is the first of an ongoing series, topic specific. Tonight we're talking about air quality. And I wanted to mention a couple of quick things before I hand this microphone off to Councilman LaMalfa to introduce Mayor Becker. We are going to be having, as I mentioned, monthly community conversations. The next one is just under a month away. It's actually on February 27th, here again, 6 p.m. The topic is education. And then a little over a month after that, on April 14th, we'll be talking about transportation. If any of you are interested in other issues, we have a box out in the lobby where you can make your comments and recommend a topic for a future conversation. And then I just wanted to really quickly run through expected format for this evening. I'm going to turn the time over in just a moment to Councilman Kyle LaMalfa to talk a little bit about civic dialogue and introduce Mayor Becker. And then we'll go from there. Mayor Becker will introduce the other members of our panel this evening, and then we will get right into question and answer. It's meant to be informal. Please feel free to raise your hand. We have a microphone that we'll be bringing around. And we have, an hour or so to talk freely about any issues that you may be wondering about. One final thing, if you would, maybe scoot up a little bit so we can have a little bit more of a conversational forum, if that's okay. Okay. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to Councilman LaMalfa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Kyle LaMalfa. I'm the council member that represents this neighborhood on the council. There are 7 of us that serve on the city council, and the mayor, Ralph Becker. We are the 8 people that set the policy and direction for Salt Lake City. We're here tonight, I think, as a broad principle that we can all agree on in Salt Lake City government, that being closer to people and connecting with people on an individual level is a process of engagement that we are ambitious about moving forward with and being better about. As such, all of the departments of the city, as well as the city council, have done a number of things to better connect with people and better listen to what are the issues that are affecting each of us every day. One part of that was our West Salt Lake Master Plan, which not only involved being at festivals and events, but also bringing on a partner to help us communicate better with people in Spanish. Another thing we did was host a public meeting out right in the middle of the street in Sugar House about issues that are relevant to Sugar House. We're here tonight at the Sorenson Unity Center at a building whose very principle, unity, is about bringing people together and about finding solutions that affect our community. We're here tonight to talk about air quality. And air quality is it's a problem you can see, it's a problem you can smell, and it's a problem that is affecting the long-term ability of not just our health, but of our ability to grow economically and to live happy lives. It's rather, I guess it's, whether it's tragic or coincidental, I don't know if you guys thought about this when you were choosing the place to have this meeting. But I was looking into some statistics across the state of Utah. The University of Utah studies about 60 different small areas in terms of health outcomes, and they look at all kinds of stuff. They look at birth rates and causes of death and medical conditions in great detail. And Glendale is one of those communities among 60 spanning the entire state of Utah. And the data I pulled off the website is the rate of hospital admissions due to asthma. And Glendale is the number one highest in terms of hospitalizations due to asthma. We have to change. We have to change our ways. And it's unfortunate that the community that is the closest to industry is also, I don't mean to lay blame, but the community that's closest to our industry is also the community that suffers the highest in terms of asthma hospitalizations. That's not the only data I pulled off of the website for the University of Utah for their medical studies. Even more tragic, we have the highest rate of lung cancer mortality here in Glendale, statewide, of all these 60 small areas. We have a serious air quality problem, and Glendale is taking on the brunt of that. And it is my hope that our dialogue here tonight can be an honest conversation where we all work together to seek real solutions, real tangible solutions, that we can all live happier and healthier lives. Mayor Becker has a plan, and he's taken a stand this year. A proud stand, and he is the tip of the spear, and Mayor Becker has really put himself out front for challenging all policymakers to do something about air quality. And with that, I would like to introduce Mayor Ralph Becker and ask if he has a few words to say. So if you put your hands together.
Kyle, thanks. I wonder if it's going to be easier maybe, since this is going to be very conversational when we're done, making a few comments, if maybe we just sit down, and if I sit down, and I'll maybe speak from here. We'll turn this one on. Does that work okay? People hear me all right? I'm going to turn this off. Try to. Thanks, Chris. Well, first, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Chris Peterson and the Unity Center for hosting us. I appreciate the comments that Kyle has made about the severity of the challenge we have with air quality, and particularly, obviously, in this neighborhood. But it's, as we all know, it's true across the it's true all across the region. Like everybody here, I think, I love Salt Lake City. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, and I feel so fortunate to have served the last 6 years as mayor of the city and work with great people like Kyle and Aaron and Vicki and others, both in city government and outside city government, to move us forward in a lot of different ways. But for all that we've been doing in the city to accomplish things in these past 6 years, and for as close as I think we are to achieving status as a great American city, there is one issue I think that holds us back today that interferes with the progress we have made and certainly our ability to move forward. And of course, that's our topic of tonight, and that's air pollution. So as Kyle mentioned, really, it threatens our physical health in significant ways. It affects our emotional health in terms of how happy we are with where we live in our daily lives, and our economic health. And it is, I think, reached a point, and I think everyone seems to agree on this topic as well, Kyle, that we have got to look at how we change what has become a turnoff to our whole region and to the city into a draw. We see not only our health affected, I think almost all of us have probably experienced interacting with neighbors who have moved away, or friends or colleagues in work or wherever it may be who have moved away because of air pollution problems. And we see consistently businesses, when they are looking to move here, ask first and foremost about our air quality problems. And sometimes that's a determining factor in businesses locating here or expanding here. So whether it's the university losing researchers, whether it's families with young children who think they don't want to live here and raise their children here, we have got to address this unhealthy and unappealing air. And it's heartbreaking in many ways when we know people who we love and want to be here, to see them either suffer or move away. But it's also disconcerting because there is much we can do about air pollution that we are not. And by its nature, it's not just a local issue. It's regional. Our airsheds are regional. And as much as we have been working in the city, I think, to very aggressively take on our air quality issues for many years, but more and more intensively over the last few years and several years, and to hold ourselves accountable in city government, to hold our residents more accountable through a series of measures like the no idling program and other things, or whether it's our businesses in promoting and working with them to reduce their contributions to air quality problems. As the Tribune said in a recent editorial, the real weapons in the battle are not in the city's arsenal, but in the states. And so as I and Vicki and others have been looking at what we can do and really need to do, we've focused more and more attention on what are the actions that can be taken, not just by us locally, but at the state level that will make the biggest difference. And, you know, what I get concerned about among us who are in the political sphere is for folks to do something that looks sexy or attractive, but may not really make a difference. And I really appreciate that Representative Romero is here with us tonight. Looks like you just came from the Hill. Because I know what long days are like up there, and probably you are really looking forward to getting home and relaxing a little bit. So being here, I really appreciate. And she can help us as a representative of this area and a member of the legislature who's very well respected and help carry the message and carry a forceful statement about things that we can do and need to do. So there are 5 things that we identified that would have the biggest effect and the most immediate effect. Nothing is going to happen overnight on this issue. But the most significant impacts on addressing our air quality problems. Those 5, in no particular order in terms of how big the impact are to have the state raise what is now a cap on how much money we as a public can spend on transit. Right now, the state says that the most amount that a local government and the citizenry voting on, the voting public voting on, can spend on transit is 3/4 cent. And if they could raise that to a penny, cent, and then if we were to vote to improve transit service, we would in very short order dramatically increase our accessibility to transit and the convenience of transit. And the reason is kind of unique to what's happened here in the last 15 years. We are known around the country, and people have really applauded around the country the work that this region has done building rail. We've had more urban rail development than any other part of the country in the last 15 years. And that rail has given us an incredible backbone for a transit system, with the light rail lines, the commuter rail lines, and now at the beginning of streetcars as well. But what's needed is for the hours to be extended, for them the trains to run more frequently, and probably most importantly, to flesh out the bus service so everybody can be within a 10-minute walk of buses to connect to a very vibrant regional system. And with the work that's been done in analyzing what an additional $0.25 would do, UTA could implement a vastly improved system in very short order, because they don't have to build the rail, they have the buses. They really just need more revenues to have more drivers and expand the bus fleet. So that's probably number one. I'll just mention other ones. Raising the gas tax, which is something that's been proposed by local governments, would make a big difference both in terms of improving how we, the condition of and our road system, and having the additional benefits that can come from other modes of transportation on our roads. But we are also tend to be responsive when gas prices go up, as everybody knows. And so that actually, in some studies, has shown to be the biggest impact. But understand raising taxes is not always a very popular notion. The difference between that and the transit tax is that people vote on it. It's not a decision made at the state level. It's a decision that is made at the local level. We just need the authority to consider that. There's also the ability to dramatically improve the fuels that come out of our refineries. It's called Tier 3, which is a major improvement in how clean burning the fuels are. And then coupled with newer vehicles that are designed to take advantage of those fuels, it can make a very significant impact on emissions from tailpipes. We can also, the vehicles are our largest contributor to air pollution, to the PM 2.5 particulates matter. So dealing with that is probably at the top of the list in terms of where we're going to have the biggest impact. Then after that comes what are called area sources, which are a whole bunch of the little sources of air pollution that cumulatively make up almost a third of the air pollution. And that's everything from two-cycle engines to dry cleaners to a lot of the really sort of smaller actions and activities that businesses and we do that can be cleaned up. And the state, in response to federal requirements, is going to be starting to implement requirements on a whole range of new sources of pollution, that will affect us and businesses certainly, but will also make a difference. The third highest contributor to air pollution are industrial sources. And that's where these Tier 3 standards come in, because if we clean up our refineries, we help clean up some of these other industrial sources of pollution, it will make a difference as well. But they have also been the most regulated sources of pollution. So a lot has been done in the industrial area, and it's always nice and easy maybe to pick on larger emitters, single emission emitters of pollution. And certainly some progress can be made there, and there needs to be work done there as well. But as part of the area sources, buildings are a very large contributor, particularly in greenhouse gases, but also in terms of small particulate matter. Everybody's furnaces, wood-burning stoves is something that Councilmember Mendenhall has been working on, can make a big difference as well. But right now, the state, and this reason it's a state issue, the state has restricted using the current standards for energy codes. And if the state would change the way those standards are adopted, we would see a 30% improvement right away in terms of efficiency in our buildings. So that becomes important as well. And then the final of the 5 items is for the state to change a current statute, a current piece of legislation that says that the state standards can be no more strict than the federal standards. Here we are in Utah, we've got unique problems. We like to pride ourselves in doing things the Utah way, but we have a statute on the books that says we can't have stricter standards than the federal government. That should get removed so that as we look at what's going to have the biggest and most significant impact, we're not restricted by what the federal standards are. By the way, there was a bill on that was considered in the Senate committee today that was defeated. So that's kind of unfortunate, but we'll kind of get to talk a little bit about how we can change that dynamic a little bit on the Hill. So the other thing that I've been saying is that, you know what, if the state isn't going to take action, give us the authority at the local level. We'll take action. When I meet with my fellow mayors, council members, county commissioners, county council members, people are ready to do things at the local level. And I don't think we see quite the reservation to take some action that will really make a difference. And some of these actually require the state to give us that authority. So the kind of basic measure there, or point there from my vantage point is, look, you guys need to do some things at the state level. If you're not willing to do it, give us the authority at the local level. Because we, I think, have the fortitude and the desire to get some things done here. And so don't limit what we can do to address air pollution locally. So finally, I guess, is a request to all of you, and that is we need you to contact our state legislature, our governor, to take these actions and other actions that are being considered up there that will allow us to improve our air quality, to authorize us, to direct us really to improve our air quality. So I hope those of you who are watching or listening, but all of us will talk to our neighbors and ourselves. We'll take it upon ourselves to go to the state website, the state legislative website, the governor's website, make calls. We're only a few minutes from the Capitol. Go up and visit some state legislators and ask them to take action. They will respond. I know it sometimes feels like they are aloof and removed from our world here in Salt Lake City, but they do respond to public pressure and public comments. And I think if we continue, we're now 36 days away from the end of the session, starting tomorrow. It's a 45-day session, so it's a short period of time they're up there. And I think if we can keep them aware of how important it is to take meaningful action, I think we'll see them much more likely to take action. So with that, I'll just say that, I think we have an incredible opportunity here to make some changes. And we need, obviously, the state's help. We need all of us to do what we can, whether it's in our own lives and how we travel or how we use the places where we can make a difference in our buildings and in our businesses and in our travel. We can make certainly a big difference. And if we address it, which I'm confident we can do, if we can keep our state leaders particularly and us, our feet to the fire, I think we can really make a big difference and make it relatively quickly. As I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but within a year we could start doing things that would really make a big difference. So I thank you for your attention. I'd now like to turn some time over to our new council member, one of our new council members on the City Council, Erin Mendenhall, who's a terrific addition for a whole variety of reasons, but maybe most importantly for tonight, she is also the executive director of Breathe Utah, which is a nonprofit organization that's been working on and promoting ways for us to improve our air quality. So, Erin,
Thanks.
turn it over to you.
Can you hear me okay? Hi, I'm Erin, and I'm, as Mayor said, a new council member. But I've been working on air quality for about 5-6 years now. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of my background because I came to air quality because I was just a concerned citizen. I used to work in quality assurance. I worked as an auditor, and it was a completely different line of work that I enjoyed a lot. And then I had my first child, and it was this time of year. I was holding this little baby and listening to a local NPR broadcast, and they were reporting on our state legislature, hearing a report that living in this valley for a lifetime, over the course of a lifetime, took about 2 years off of a person's life just from the effects of the pollution that we breathe in as residents here. And if you're a parent or you love babies, maybe, and you've held one, and to hear a statement like that when you're in the thick of it, it's January, it was a bad inversion that year, and I thought, we're leaving right now. I'm going to put you in the car, and we're going to drive away, and we're never coming back here. Because how can you be okay with that? And I realized after I gathered my senses about me that I don't want to leave Salt Lake City, and I love it here. But that if I was going to stay, I decided then I really wanted to do something about it. And I had some friends who would volunteer occasionally, who were physicians actually, and passionate about the subject in their own regards, and invited me to come tabling with them for some air quality nonprofits. And I did. I didn't know anything more than the person on the other side of the table, really, about air quality, but that's where I began to learn. And I found that I really had a passion for it. So in time, I started working for a nonprofit as a volunteer coordinator, and have really come to love this subject. And now I'm executive director for this nonprofit. So we work with Breathe Utah through collaboration, education, and policy. Those are our main areas of focus, and occasionally they overlap. And what's been fun about coming onto the council is that some of the work I get to do in a nonprofit sector overlaps a bit with the council. In that, it could be illustrated by a recent survey that Envision Utah did in the fall with Utah residents along the Wasatch Front, and found that the #1 issue for citizens is air quality. And so it really is a citizens issue. It's us. It is, it doesn't matter if we're a Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter if we're a newborn baby or a 90-year-old. We are all affected by air quality. It does not see the difference in any of us. And yet, it is a political issue. But the exciting part in the time that I've been working on air quality is the amount of momentum that we've gained with this subject. And Mayor Becker's been a really fantastic leader, and the Salt Lake City administration sustainability on working on this issue before it was necessarily on the tip of the governor's tongue. But as we've heard from his State of the State address just a week ago tomorrow, there's quite a bit more attention around air quality. Now, whether or not that'll translate to the passage of some significant bills during this session, we've yet to see. But it's encouraging that there's more funding being proposed to go towards the Division of Air Quality and some other specific projects. And it's a really fascinating subject. So I am looking forward to the give and take of the discussion. I hope you'll feel free to ask me about just about anything about air quality.
So next is Vicki Bennett. Vicki Bennett is the Sustainability Director in Salt Lake City, an expert in air quality, among other subjects relating to sustainability, and we've really benefited enormously from her work for, how many years have you been at the city?
13.
13 years. God, you're getting ready for retirement.
Oh, I keep counting.
Yeah, anyway, thank you, Vicki.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Well, like the mayor said, I am the sustainability director for the city, and that is a very broad topic, as you can imagine, and it is one of the buzzwords of the age and almost sometimes hard to describe. So I did bring a few copies, and I think they've probably all been taken, but I do want to just talk for a minute broadly about the sorts of things we do. I mean, the sustainability division really tries to not only start by implementing things at a city level, for example, energy efficiency in our municipal buildings, and then what can we do to help with energy efficiency in homes and businesses. The idling program, the anti-idling program started with an executive order that none of our employees should idle in any city vehicle, and then moved to the ordinance against idling. So many of the things that we do, we really try to first work on it at a city municipal level, then take it out to the community. We now have a sustainable city plan, and this is on our website, and I think it's pretty easy to remember. It's slcgreen.com. And this goes through not only what we're working on directly in the sustainability division, because we have a number of things we do, but we also work closely with, for example, public utilities on a lot of their water issues, and transportation on bicycle issues and what they're doing, and help them with outreach. And so we really have our fingers in just about everything in the city when it comes to what we can do to make the city a more livable place. The main thing I'd really like to ask of all of you is, if you have the time and interest, when you go to the SLC Green, there is what's called a Sustainable City Dashboard. And that dashboard has all of these general goals and strategies that are in here, but then 100 or more different actions that the city's working on to try and improve on. And it has wonderful graphs and charts saying, here's where we were, here's where we are, here's where we're going. And each one of those pages has a little light bulb on it that says idea. And if you click on that and put an idea in, it gives us things to work from, because it's ideas from everybody that are going to be what really move us forward. So if you have the time, take a look at that. Put in your thoughts, put in your ideas. If you have a question, put it in there. We do monitor it. We either send it to the appropriate department, we answer it ourselves, and that's the sort of things that's going to help us as we move forward. What's most important? What sort of things make sense? What sort of things, you might have an idea and say, well, that might not work as well. What about this? We're really looking for input on things like that. Obviously, right now, we spend a lot of time on the air quality issue. Everything from what can we do within the city, the sorts of things that we're doing short-term, long-term. Can we get people, we have a Smart Trips program to encourage alternative commuting, get people on buses, and get them used to the idea that here's how you might be able to ride a bike to work. And everything from classes on what you might wear to be more comfortable to where the bike lanes are. We really try and make it so we're covering all of the topics. But again, any input we can ever get, we really appreciate.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard a range of things discussed here tonight. I might just mention a couple of things that are upcoming. One is, beginning March 1st, every resident of Salt Lake City can get a bus pass, a transit pass for the whole system for a 70% discount. Okay, so it's called the Hive Pass. I think I have one in my pocket. I usually carry them with me.
We have some, and I know we have lots of the little cards out on the table in front.
Yeah, so you'll see that, but any of you who are interested in taking advantage of this to make, hopefully, transit much more accessible and easier to use, we hope you'll do that. And we've made it, I think, as easy as possible for people to be able to get the pass. So there'll be areas in individual neighborhoods. You'll be able to pay. It's an annual pass. You have to commit to an annual pass, but you can pay monthly at $30 a month. So we invite you to join that. As Vicki mentioned, we hope you'll go to our website. There are literally dozens of things that we are working on in the city to try to reduce our contribution to the pollution in the air, changing out our fleets, changing our buildings, upgrading our buildings. And we could go on down a very long list. And there'll be some new things coming through the council, I'm sure, this year with the leadership of Kyle and Aaron and some of our other council members. But with that, I think before we open it up to questions from those of you who are here, we have the benefit of having had Chris and some of his folks go to some of the classrooms and ask some of our kids in schools if they have questions for us. I'm going to pose these questions and invite any of you to jump in on them. This is from Stephanie Rosales at Glendale Middle School, a 12-year-old at Glendale. Her question is, can we tell people to drive less in the winter? So who wants to take a shot at that?
I think we do tell people to drive less in the winter. Yes. We also try to give them alternates, such as taking the bus, even biking, working from home if at all possible, changing the times that they drive if possible, so they're not driving when it's the most crowded on the roads. Those are the ones I can think of on the top of my head.
I was going to bring up the Clear the Air Challenge, which has moved from Vicky's office at Sustainability to the Chamber. And in the past, there's been a Clear the Air resolution, am I saying that right? Which was done in January. But the cool part about Clear the Air Challenge, if you go onto the website, it's a really fantastic tracking mechanism where you can put in how many trips you eliminated, approximately how many miles are eliminated, and it'll cough out how many calories you burned if you walked or if you rode a bike or if you walked to the bus stop. And it's a great tool. And then there's incentives in the summertime program where individuals can win bicycles, and there's other.
All kinds of good awards, yeah.
Did you have something?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that I read in the newspaper that UTA is giving away several thousand week-long ballot bus passes for no charge. I think you just need to sign up on their website, get a free bus pass for a week. Not only that, but remind everyone that Salt Lake City is pretty ambitious about our urban trails program, and over the course of the next year or so, we'll see the 9-line trail that's currently running on about 9th South be expanded to be better connected to the east side, east and west along 9th South.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to maybe ask one more question, then we'll go to the audience and maybe come back and forth. So this is from Aaron at North Star School. He's 9 years old. What are you going to do with the businesses that cause pollution? You want to try to answer that one, Vic?
What are we going to do? We do regulate them. And I guess that's a hard one because I say we, and now we're at the state level. And that's one of those issues that makes it harder as local leaders because the state has regulatory authority over the businesses that cause pollution. And they are actually requiring them through what they call the State Implementation Plan, which is the new set of regulations that is coming out because of the fact that we're what's called not in attainment. We are actually polluting too much and have the spikes in pollution. And these industries are being required to put more controls on their facilities. So they are being regulated. The argument is, are they being regulated enough? And the other argument is, should they be allowed, some of them are actually being allowed to expand while they put these controls on. And there are people who just don't think that they should expand at all because it is a essentially polluted full airshed.
So the short answer is, yeah, businesses can be required to reduce their pollution very significantly. As we talked about earlier, that does not happen at the city level for the most part. I mean, we've done some things like our no idling ordinance, which the state thought about trying to tell us we couldn't do. But the way our rules work in government is that the federal government, the Environmental Protection Agency, sets the standards. So this is what air quality is that's acceptable for health by pollutants, so particulate matter, PM2.5. And then the state has to come up with a plan if we do not meet the standard, which Salt Lake area does not meet the standard. The state then has to come up with a plan for how they will achieve the standard. And that means looking at businesses and industries, it means looking at transportation, it means looking at a whole variety of other sources. So that's kind of how it works. But that's the reason, as Vicki said, that we need the state to help us address this issue. Okay, questions, comments, anyone, please?
So,
if you could introduce yourself too, it'd be great.
Dave Williams. So with the Holly refinery expansion, I don't know if that's in Salt Lake City, it's not, but at
right
the
on the
local
border.
level, are they not allowed to regulate whether or not they're able to expand when it's a full airshed?
We have no control over that. That's all done at the state level. It's the Division of Air Quality and the Air Quality Board.
But to put that, go ahead.
That being said, we're calling on the state of Utah to give us the authority to have the ability to do more,
Yeah.
to do more regulation.
And this is an area because the controls, the decision-making is at the state level, where if we weigh in, it will have some influence. And if there are enough people who weigh in, it'll have a large influence over the state's decision over what happens at a place like the Holly Refinery.
And then, sorry, another question. How do you deal with kind of a systemic problem when you encourage commuting and we have such a big suburban community of encouraging people to go outside and take the bus, a 10-minute walk to the bus when it's a red air day, and they have to walk 10 minutes and breathe in the unhealthy air. And how do you get around that besides maybe incentivizing personal transportation that is cleaner?
Can I take a stab at that? So there is absolutely a catch-22 when we are saying it's really unhealthy, the air is really bad, so please don't drive, which means that the great majority of us, particularly if you don't live in Salt Lake City, don't have a bus stop right outside of our door, and that would mean exposing yourself to what we're just calling harmful pollution and asking you to get out there. I get that, I understand every day during the winter that that's an issue. It's an issue personally. And that we have a lot of Utahns with asthma. As a little side note, the national average is about 8.5% of the population has asthma. Utah is about 8.3%, so we're pretty consistent with the national average. Some really preliminary studies that were done by phone survey through the health department in 2009, I believe, looked at areas proximal to the refineries and along I-15 north of Salt Lake. So I think it began in Woods Cross. And it was a small study, but it was a study to check asthma rates around those areas. And what they found was rates from about 10.5% to about 14.5%. So, and like I said, that was a really early study, but it makes sense that when we are exposed in a condensed area, as we can be up against a mountain and with a refinery on the other side or near a freeway, that we end up having people who have asthma show those symptoms, and then we also have people who don't have asthma showing up at the emergency room with asthma-like symptoms from that kind of exposure. That being said, the State Division of Air Quality toxicologist, one of their toxicologists, likened our lungs to me like an ice rink, and that we have been equipped for the entire existence of humans to some degree to deal with particle matter. We've been, before factories, we've always had wildfires, we've had volcanoes, there have been particles in the air that aren't friendly to our lungs. And so there's macrophages whose job it is to Zamboni around that ice rink and slowly clean things up. But it's when we get past that point of being able to deal with what we're inundated with that we start to have those negative effects. Now that's one person's opinion. There's a lot of other research that says there are no healthy levels for exposure to air pollution. So to one degree or another, you can read whatever research you might align with, but we are all able to some degree, and that's personal depending on you and your lungs and your age and your health condition, to deal with pollution. Now what that is different from me to you and every other person in this room. So staying aware of what the current air quality conditions are, I think, and paying attention to your own physical symptoms is our best tool to managing that.
Let me just add on that as far as being incented to take the bus or being closer to the bus so it's not a full 10 minutes, Salt Lake City's been ambitious in its approach to transit-oriented development, which is creating zones around transit stations where it's allowed to build tall buildings and giving developers more flexibility, more tools, and better, essentially trying to make it more profitable for developers to build around these transit stations, to make them more popular places to live, with the hope that people who choose to live there may be the kind of people that are working downtown, and instead of using the highways, they will be using, because they'll be so close, they'll be using our rail or our other transit options because they're part of this transit-oriented development.
So what Kyle is pointing out, Councilmember Lamaffa is pointing out, is that there are so many different factors that go into air pollution and that go into how we and the way we live and the way businesses operate affect air quality. And one of the largest really is how our development occurs, that people don't always recognize, but if we live closer to transit, we're obviously not driving as far to either get to transit or walking, or we can walk easily or take a bike easily or use other modes to be able to get to transit. And the trade-off, going to your question really is, if enough of us are reducing our vehicular use, whether that's by using transit, by not driving as much, by walking more or biking more, then the air quality will get better. And so in a way, it's incumbent on all of us and sort of how we conduct our lives and what we do and the way we travel around. But the air quality will get better. So you might have a 10-minute walk to your bus stop or your train station. But you know what? If people go from today using 3 to 4% of trips on transit to 10%, or the University of Utah, a third of the trips to the University of Utah are now by transit. You can think about how many cars that takes off the road and how much vehicular pollution is reduced.
Population grows and comes right back.
Well, not necessarily, because we have, in a way, natural growth boundaries, right? We've got the mountains, we've got the lakes, we're in long, narrow valleys. We're pretty close to filling up these valleys. So from this point forward almost, with some exceptions, the development is going to be occurring in a more compact way. And with that, the vehicular use will go down if we have a good transit system for an alternative. So we've got, in a way, some real disadvantages when it comes to air pollution because we live in these valleys that are surrounded by these beautiful mountains that trap all of our pollutants. But that also means that we not only have the potential, but the likelihood, if we're smart about how we live and how we develop, of having people living closer together, which supports better transit service. So it kind of works in an odd combination of ways from my vantage point, but yeah. Other questions, or should I turn to one of these? Please.
Jean Capenda. Since some of the air pollution is brought into the city by outsiders, I don't know exactly which percentage it is. Are you working with other cities to join forces to do exactly what you're doing here, what you're trying to do in Salt Lake, to create the kind of awareness in other users, other vehicle users in other cities, in Provo and other areas, that bring into Salt Lake a substantial amount of pollution?
I can comment on that, then others can. Yeah, we are working actually. There are a number of regional organizations of local government officials, so mayors and council members and commissioners from all up and down the Wasatch Front. So from, in the case of our airshed, really from Brigham City down to Provo and even south of Provo. And we get together regularly and talk about things that we're doing, and we're learning from each other. We're comparing notes. And so when I mentioned earlier that if you give us the authority at the local level, I'm confident we're going to make decisions that will help our air quality. That's not just a statement from me. That's a statement based on literally now years of discussion about what can we do locally, what would we want to do locally, and what would we be willing to do locally. And there's so much more desire at the local level to take action to address air quality than I've seen so far at the state level from our elected officials, that it's a different dynamic. So yeah, when I talk to the mayors of Provo and Ogden and all the cities in between, we talk about this and go, there's some things we would like to see done if we could get the authority from the state to do it.
And I hate to jump in, but that's where you all need to really contact us. I'm there. We have a bipartisan mayor committee, and there's 19 pieces of legislation that has been proposed, some that are addressing the questions you're asking today, but until you get all your family and friends to contact some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the Senate and in the House, until they feel that pressure, nothing's going to change. I mean, we've taken some big steps in the right direction, but we still need that public pressure.
Yeah. Representative Romero has been a great leader on this, but she's one of 75 members of the House. Yeah. And then there are another 29 members of the Senate, and they need to hear from us, even if you don't live in their district.
Jean, I just wanted to address two things about your question. We do have traveling pollution, and it's the Division of Air Quality just finished up a study in the last year in the West Desert looking at some of that pollution and the consistent levels of pollution that we have with that they call background. So particularly for ozone, we have ozone regulations right now at the EPA. There's talk that they will be. Can you hear me okay? That they're.
I just turned mine off and yours went
I know, it
off.
seemed like mine went off with yours.
Interesting.
Anyway, these background levels of ozone, let me go back. EPA has ozone standards, just like we have PM 2.5 standards. There's talk that those standards are going to be lowered. And this is a nationwide standard, right? They don't do this per region. If that happens, then most of Utah will be in non-attainment for ozone. Currently, we're not in non-attainment for ozone. And part of the frustration that I hear from the state at the Division of Air Quality is that while we have been working to lower pollution levels, both PM 2.5 and ozone, our peaks are dropping because of some of these mitigation efforts, because of a turnover of a fleet of vehicles. You know, our cars are getting cleaner. They're both a source of ozone precursors and of PM 2.5. Things are happening that are lowering those peak levels, but our background levels are rising. And part of that is this traveling pollution that's coming into the state. It's coming in from Vegas, it's coming in from Los Angeles, it's even coming in from Asia. And they've been able to identify those particles to that degree that some of this pollution travels overseas and that we get it here, it doesn't stay here, but it affects those background levels.
Yeah, maybe
We've got one.
Oh, we've got another one. Good, thanks.
Thank you. So, I appreciate all of your time, your efforts currently and ongoing. My partner and I moved back to Utah, back for me, and to Utah a year ago, and it's from the East Coast. You know, growing up, I thought the East Coast was all smog. Coming back, it was quite a surprise to find that it's dirtier here than a much more populated area. I have a comment and a question. The first, regarding contacting our senators, state senators, and representatives. I think most of those of us who are in this room, our senators and representatives are already bought in. It's, I think, outside of the city and the county that the Congress folks need to hear this message. And I think we're doing a lot of effort for those of us within the city, but I think we might need to push the state a little bit more to act. I think that there might be an opportunity for you folks to pressure them. Maybe it comes to some embarrassment on a national level of the state to get a little bit more action going on. But as far as the question, you mentioned, Mayor Becker, that you're working on building some, the development around the transit hubs. As we moved here, we found that a lot of the jobs are out west of 215, where there is really no bus system, where there's a large amount of warehouses and such, but you really can't get there on the bus system. And I'm wondering if there's something that the city can do, either development-wise or again, pressure with UTA to to make that a little bit more transit friendly. Thank you.
So UTA is a favorite kind of whipping post for a lot of folks, but I can tell you that nationally they are recognized as being about the most efficient transit service in the country. What they don't have, though, are the revenue resources to be able to make it easy to take buses and trains to be able to move quickly and easily around the region. And as I mentioned, maybe it was before you came in, the state sets how much money the public can fund transit at the local level. And they have said we're at the top level of that now in Salt Lake and some of the other Wasatch Front counties. And they've basically said we can't spend more money on transit. So the only way that's going to change is for the state to give us the authority, both as local governments, but then ultimately it goes to a vote of the people to expand transit service. There's no question that for most places, whether you're in Salt Lake City or in other places along the Wasatch Front, there isn't good transit access and transit service. And the only way that can change is for us to have more buses, have more frequent service, have that service running longer from the morning to the night. And to do that, UTA, Utah Transit Authority, needs more revenue. So that's the reason that some of us are pushing so hard to get the state to give us the authority as voters and taxpayers and as local governments to be able to make a decision to improve transit. Because my sense in what I hear a lot from members in the community and people I interact with outside of the community as well, is that there are a lot of people, I'm not saying it's the majority, but there are a lot of people who today would use transit if it didn't take them, an hour and a half to get somewhere that they can drive to in 15 minutes. And that's what we have across a lot of the valley now.
One thing I could also bring up, and I feel your pain when it comes to the fact that it's not going to do you any good to, perhaps talk to your representative, because I'm in the same position. The people who represent me are already fighting this battle for us. But I do use social media to some extent, and I have friends in Washington County, and I have friends who live in West Valley, and I have friends who live in the south end of the valley, and I especially reach out to them and say, hey, will you please call your representatives, because those are the people that we need to reach. And I'll also put in a quick plug for one of our partners that we work closely with. It's called Utah Clean Energy. They have an excellent tracking matrix on their website. It's just utahcleanenergy.org, and if you click on it says 2014 legislative session, they are tracking the clean air bills, and you can see where they are and what's happening and which ones you might be interested in commenting on.
And I was going to add that the issue you bring up about the industrial area being underserved with bus service, it's something as a person who represents the industrial areas in my district, is something I've spent some, got some brain drain going on and thinking about that very problem. Part of the problem is structural in that I'll tell you, there are the same number of jobs in the industrial area as there are in downtown Salt Lake. But the thing is, they're not all concentrated in one tight place. They're all spread around. And it's expensive to run a bus per mile. It's a cost per mile thing. And in the conversation with UTA about this, they said, hey, it costs a lot more to run a bus to jobs out there than it does to run a bus around downtown. And this is what UTA refers to. Well, it's one of the ways they refer to the last mile problem, is getting people the last mile away from the core transit routes. So as a replacement, they have started up, and it's been going on a long time, the van pool program, where a group of people who work at the same place can pool their money together to do a van, and UTA buys the van on their behalf, and somebody who's in the group drives the van, and that's been their answer to those more remote locations. But I'd also add that since it's an air quality forum we're talking about, the city council just passed an ordinance that any parking lot that's 25 spaces or bigger has got to have electric car charging stations. And so rather than pushing everybody to transit, we're going to say, maybe electric cars for larger employers or something, an option they ought to consider to reduce the air quality problem.
Great, thank you. I'm going to, because this is such a good question, I know we're going to have everyone here want to answer it. So this is from Tony Part, who's at Glendale Middle School, 12-year-old. Can scientists make antidotes?
Why don't you go ahead with that one?
Hey, wait a minute. Not yet. But you know what? Probably that kid is going to figure out some antidote to air pollution effects on our health.
And maybe I'll use this as a really quick opportunity to talk about the school recess guidelines that affect our kids in schools, whether or not they can go out to play, and what those guidelines are. There is within the Department of Health, there's the state asthma program, which facilitates that discussion with doctors and scientists who wish there were an antidote, but in the meantime, we just have to keep kids in quite a bit. And they do a really good job. You could even subscribe to that. You get an email before 8 o'clock in the morning from the asthma department saying, here's our recommendations. And if you have sensitive groups of kids, or you have the general public of the student body. But I think that's been one of the ways that we've had. Am I here?
No, it turned you off.
Anyway, that's one of the ways that we've gotten more Utahns into this conversation, I think, is because a lot of their kids are affected. And I think outreach and education into the K through 12 piece of our population is effective more than we want to give it credit for, because we end up teaching kids about air quality science and point sources and the differences between ozone and PM 2.5 and what they can do besides not just telling their parents to turn the key off, but Turn Your Key, Be Idle Free is an important campaign, but there's ways that even kids can make choices about air quality. And the sooner we can get K through 12 thinking about air quality, much to all of our discomfort, before we know it, they're going to be sitting up here. And I think because they've been thinking about it earlier, that we're going to end up finding solutions that we haven't come up with yet. Good question. Tony.
Other questions, or we appreciate all of you staying with us and participating?
He has another one. You want to?
Sure. If no one else can ask, obviously this has been kind of pegged as a partisan issue for some reason, based on today's results of the bill that didn't get passed. Are there champions who are on the side of the more conservative group that we could maybe try and bolster and create kind of some movement behind the ones that are championing the conservative side of the issue?
Do you want to do that one first?
Well, it seems odd, doesn't it, that people would think of air quality as a partisan issue, because we all breathe the same air and we all have the same effects, and we see the effects throughout our communities and society. But there is a Clean Air Caucus in the legislature. It is bipartisan. They're both Democrats and Republicans as part of it. There are a number of bills or legislative proposals this year that are being run by Republicans. So it's not, I don't think, so much a partisan issue.
Is it a business issue? What are they?
Why aren't they voting?
Is it a campaign finance reform issue?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. There are certainly, having spent 11 years in the legislature, and now I've been away for 6 years, so I can't claim to be as knowledgeable as I was then, but in terms of the makeup of the legislature and why people vote and take positions the way they do. But it's a real mix of things. Certainly there is in this state, among more conservative members of the legislature, some, and you can't say this as stereotype it too much, but there are some who think environmental measures are of not only of secondary importance, but they wonder why we try to regulate air pollution and why we just don't let the free market system go its way. There are some who hate the idea of government control and who think voluntarily we should just clean up the air, both businesses and residents. There are some who don't think we should be putting any money into things like transit because people don't use transit today, so why should we put more money into transit? That's sort of, I'm not saying any of those things are accurate, I'm just saying there's sort of a combination of thinking from my long-time discussions with members of the legislature and members of the communities, largely outside of Salt Lake City, but still members of the community who reflect those kinds of points of view and make them resistant to doing things that actually would make a difference to improving air quality. On the other hand, not only do all of us breathe the same air, but all of these legislators are elected. And they do respond when they hear enough from folks in the community. And if a legislator hears from 5 or 10 folks who are their constituents or otherwise contact them, it may get some notice. If they hear from 100 folks, I can tell you, if a legislator hears from 100 people on an issue, that is a lot, and it does get their attention. So it's the reason, you hear us kind of beating the drum that it really does make a difference if people voice their opinions, even though it may seem like all those folks up there on the hill are living in their own world and don't really care. Most of them, if not all of them, really do care. They just come at it from a different mindset, but they will respond at a certain point, most of them will, to what the public tells them.
Does that have to be more than 5,000 people winding up on the doorstep of the Capitol for them to hear?
So I don't know if people could hear the question. The question was, does it have to be more than 5,000 people? I think the question that a lot of, on the steps of the Capitol, I think a lot of legislators, by the time they're halfway through a legislative session, will have forgotten that. It's the nature, as Representative Romero can attest to, and I can attest to. Yeah. Yeah. The pace of intensity of a 45-day session to do all of the state's business that the legislature tries to address is almost inconceivable. And what happens over time, from my observation, and Representative Romero can correct me, is in a way you become more and more insulated because you're talking to fellow legislators, you're talking to the lobbyists who are up there every day, and you're kind of getting this wind of public opinion that comes to you. But something that happens before the legislative session starts is almost forgotten as they get towards the end of a session because attention spans get shorter and the activity and the pace of decision making gets faster. And it's just tough. And that's the reason I think if there's sort of a continuing drumbeat of public input to the legislature, it actually does make a difference.
And for me, like the more personal it is to me, addressed to me, it makes it easier for me to answer. If you're just sending me like a standard, like I get a lot of like uniform emails where it's just you paste and cut and paste. And I appreciate those too because I'm supportive of anti-discrimination, I'm supportive of marriage equality. Those are things I support, but what I need to hear from constituents is this is how this impacts me. This is me as an individual, because then I think it puts more of a personal face. So for me, this is not even an issue. I would like to see us pass more clean air, more air quality legislation, but for my colleagues, there has to be that kind of personal connection with them. So the more personal you can get with them, if you live in their district and say, this is why I care, this is why you should care, I think it's more effective than just doing a form email. That's just my opinion, though. You might have a different.
No, I think that's exactly right. And think about this. We're right now 10 minutes from the state capitol. Almost everyone who lives in this area is very close to the state capitol. People would be surprised, if not shocked, that you can go up to the state capitol when the representatives, senators are on the floor and send in a note and say, I'd like to speak to you about air quality. And the chances are that, if they're not right in the middle of something where they're making a speech on the floor or having to take a vote on the floor, they will come out. And as Representative Romero said, that personal contact is far and away the most effective contact that can be made. So whether a legislator is your legislator or not, it helps if it is, but it's not absolutely necessary for a legislator to respond to you on a personal contact like that.
Can I ask a question of Representative Romero and Mayor Becker? We've had, I'm sorry, Angela, we've had a great drumbeat also coming from our media. I think the Tribune has done a great job of kind of keeping that standard on the front page, and we see it weekly, if not more often than that. Is it KUED that's broadcasting
Yeah, tonight.
the first part of a series, and there have been panels. The Leonardo had one on Friday night. There was the panel at the downtown library on the previous Wednesday. But does that get through? Because we had a great big rally. It was a huge rally. And while I think perhaps some of the representatives up there on the Hill don't identify with rallying, and they might close their ears off to that message, the media has done a great job, I think, this year and does the media's banner waving get through?
Some of my colleagues that have never thought about air quality or clean air, my caucus has been running bills for renewable energy, clean air. We've been running these bills for years and years and years. And some of those bills our Republican colleagues are actually running now, as you see Joe Briscoe's running a bill, and Johnny Anderson's running a bill similar to his bill. And so they're starting to catch on. But I like Mayor Becker's idea. If you green slip us and you organize people to send those green slips there, because we're there in the House chambers, and he's right, we're insulated. And if you can flood us with some green slips or some blue slips if you're going into the Senate, that's going to keep it on our minds, because there's so much we're trying to say. We're trying to make sure we do a balanced budget. We're trying to make sure that we're addressing public education. But air quality is huge, and so I want to make sure that that's not forgotten with some of my colleagues. So the more interactive you can be with us during the session, the more it's on our mind.
So just an additional point on the media. The media does have a very powerful impact on legislators and on the legislature. And it's kind of interesting in that a lot of legislators will tell you, I don't like the media, or the media is not representative of the views of my constituency, or they'll get pretty defensive when the media says they don't like what someone is doing or saying. But they really do pay attention. So I really do think this series of stories, the fact that they know that based on polling, this is right now the #1 issue on people's lips and minds, is getting their attention. And the challenge for us in working with, and really being, I say that in a very respectful way, because it really is working with our legislators. No one likes to be attacked, right? Is to keep their feet to the fire to do some things that are meaningful. And there, as we've talked about this evening, there are a lot of things they can do that would make a difference. And the challenge is to give them the courage and the support to do the things that will really make a difference, that for them might not be politically that easy, because it may mean a tax increase that someone else would make, right? But they don't want to touch the word that has the name tax in it. So, I really do think in some ways it comes back on us to help them feel more comfortable or confident in making a decision that'll make a difference.
Hi, my name's Carl, and first of all, thank you all for doing this, for being thought leaders and pushing these things forward. Knowing that vehicles, traffic is the largest contributor to many of the particulates in the air, I think personally that drivers should be paying a higher cost. But aside from that, as far as things that we can do, one of the things you suggested was that if transportation were able to, in my words, have a larger spend, there were some things that that could be done to enhance public transportation. Am I speaking on that correctly? So what could I do as an individual to pressure that, to apply pressure to making that happen? Is there anything I can do?
Well, I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but I'll just say there's a lot that we can do. Obviously, we can do things in our personal lives. It's like, so do we really need to drive our car every day? Is there a way we can not drive our car one day a week? Think about that. That's 20%, or if you look at 7 days a week, less than that of the trips we take. So there are things we can do personally that make a difference. But a key to that, from my vantage point, is to make it easier to use transit. And it's going to be easier to use transit if there are more buses and trains running more frequently and going to more places. And that's where we cannot go further. That is, us at the local level, we cannot go further unless the legislature gives us the authority to make decisions to improve. If they give that decision, it still comes back to us. It still comes back to us as elected officials to say we will put something on the ballot, and then for the voting public to decide whether or not they're willing to support more funding for transit.
But is there anything that we can do to help that along, help that cause along? As far as getting the state to...
Yeah, certainly buying a Hive passengers in your own life, but it really is going to come down to the state giving us the authority. So contacting state legislators, contacting the governor and say, hey, I would be willing, I mean, if you were to say personally, I would be willing to use transit more if it was more available to me. That is telling them, and there was a poll that came out just before the legislative session started that said, I think it was 60% of the people said they would use transit more and they would be willing to support even increased funding for transit if they had that opportunity.
I'll just give my 2 bits. And another thing that we can do is, as members of this community is to talk about ideas in a way that maybe is catchier and maybe frames the problem in a different way. Maybe to stop talking about the gas tax as gas lets you do stuff, maybe to talk about it instead as a pollution tax, because pollution takes things away, and people who pollute should pay. Or another one that I heard the other day that really stuck with me is a few years ago people were talking about peak oil and a concern that, oh gosh, we're going to run out of oil. That concern has kind of gone away. But changing our way of thinking and saying, we are going to be at peak road. No more roads. No more expanding roads. We're at the max. And that would, by itself, constrain the amount of pollution that cars can pollute by saying, you know what? If we're going to get around, it's got to be another way besides cars. So, stick with those zingers. That's my 2 bits.
In Salt Lake, you guys have the headquarters for the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints. How much have they weighed in? Are they a powerful enough lobby? It seems like one of the issues might be that St. George doesn't really care about air quality as much as maybe we do here, or people who aren't as affected by it don't really feel like they want to pay the taxes for Salt Lake County to get cleaned up. Do they have a lot of influence, and have they weighed in? How's the relationship with them in terms of pressuring them to weigh in?
First of all, the LDS Church has actually been, I think, a terrific leader in the community on air pollution and air quality. They issue all of their employees passes, and they're one of the largest employers in the city. And they really encourage their employees to use those passes. I think they have about the highest ridership of any organization in the city or in the state in terms of their employees. And some of it, of course, is transit is very convenient, right, for where most of those employees work. But they've also been very supportive in other ways. I have not heard a statement come out from them as a religious matter. people think that the LDS Church weighs in on a lot of things, but you really could say there are only two things really the LDS Church regularly weighs in on. And we know what those are, right? It's liquor and abortion or gay marriage. To them, those are very moral doctrinal issues. So it's very seldom that they would weigh in. If you look at the editorials in the Deseret News, though, they have taken pretty strong stands through that outlet of information they provide. There's not a direct link between the Deseret News and the LDS Church, but the LDS Church owns the Deseret News, so you can imagine it has some influence. So they really have shown leadership there, I think, within the realm of how they tend to operate in the public sphere.
Can I just backpedal a couple of things ago? Something I wanted to say. Mayor Becker and Angela, are you still here? Both said for us to approach our representatives during session, and it seemed like both of you said, okay, take your slip, take your blue slip or green slip them. I don't know if everybody understands that exactly. I'm a docent at the Capitol, so I understand that, but maybe you could be specific on how you can get that question while somebody's in session.
Okay, thank you. I mean, everyone in this room is capable actually of being a lobbyist at the legislature. You know, we think of it as just sort of high-powered, expensive folks. But unlike Congress, which operates completely differently, you can go up to the Capitol and stand outside of the doors of the House or the Senate. And you can fill out a slip and give it to one of the security guys who are there at the door. They will bring that slip to the representative or the senator and say, this person is here to see you. And the majority of the time, those members will come out and visit with you. Now, I would suggest that before you do something like that, you find out a little bit about the person you want to visit, so that you know something about them when they come out the door. Your representative from this area, Representative Romero, I'm sure she'd love to see you, but she's already probably in the same camp you are in terms of what your views are. But it is remarkably easy. It's amazing how accessible state legislators are to people who will come up and actually visit. Now, there are a lot of other ways, I won't get into it, to catch them. When they are going to a committee meeting or in the halls or going to lunch or going to the bathroom, whatever, and they're kind of just moving around. But you usually have to kind of follow, and this is true to a certain extent even if you're going up to catch them when they're on their floors and in their body as a whole. You have to track what their schedule is and where they are in certain places, and then you can actually find them as well walking around the halls. You can go to the legislative website or call up there, and they will tell you when senators and House members are on their floor, and it's usually for a couple of hours in the morning. As the session goes on, it's then a couple of hours as well in the afternoon, and they spend more and more time on the floor as the session goes on. But thanks for the question.
What is the city doing for its buildings? And you mentioned some efficiency and mentioned that earlier.
The city's had a long-standing building energy efficiency program where we're really trying, the wonderful thing about energy efficiency is you've got the double advantage of saving money as you're reducing the amount of pollution that you're creating. And we started, about 6 years ago, using a process where it's called an ESCO project, where we worked with a company that went into groups of our buildings, determined what we could do to make them more efficient, actually loaned us the money to make them more efficient, and then we paid them back with the energy savings. And it's a great process. And we've also partnered quite a bit with Rocky Mountain Power and Questar. They have grants and also other loans available. And so when it comes to where our buildings are now, we're feeling pretty good that most of them are, really hitting the energy efficiency high levels. We just got a grant. It's a private grant where we can now really start to go out to other buildings, to the, privately owned buildings throughout the community and start working with them on programs like this. First thing that is part of that is what's called energy benchmarking, where you would go in and determine how much energy your building's using and then kind of compare it to other buildings of the same size and type. And then after that, it would go on to, we're looking at, this is brand new. This was just announced a week ago. And so we're still creating the programs, but we can have some challenges. We are going to be working with them, and again, Rocky Mountain Power and Questar, where we could help put them in touch with the right people, help them get audits done. Once you have a building audit done, you can determine where your cost savings, the low-hanging fruit for energy efficiency, or where else you could actually make the improvements. So we're only one of 10 cities in the United States that got this grant, and it's a 3-year grant where we're going to be really reaching out and trying to do the energy efficiency with the building owners, and that will not only reduce the amount of energy use, it will save them money, it will save direct pollution from the fact that they won't have to use as much natural gas, indirect pollution because they won't be using as much electricity. I think it's going to be a really exciting program as we roll it out.
So another thing we've been doing is we set a standard for all of our city buildings to be minimum LEED Silver, which is Leading Energy and Environmental Design Standards, which is it's an international standard. We just upped that at the beginning of this year to LEED Gold, which is probably the highest standard for any municipality, certainly in this state or probably most other places. We've actually been doing that the last few years, but we said let's make that the standard for whenever we're working on our buildings. We also, in July, opened up the first net zero public safety building in the country. So we are actually either achieving a lot through efficiency, as Vicki was talking about. Really, it's 70% more energy efficient than the standards that are in place today for buildings. But then we've supplemented that with solar so that all of the rest of the building needs are being met through renewable energy. And we're doing that now, have set that as a goal for every building project we're doing.
I'll just tag on to that we are investing in a new airport complex. It's a multiple $billion-dollar project that will take 10 years. And those buildings are going to be LEED certified. So as far as municipal buildings. And net zero gold. All right. As far as private markets go, I mentioned earlier our transit-oriented zoning. There's a new approach to building permits in that if you do some certain things, including making your building a LEED building in one of these transit zones, you can qualify for an expedited plan review, and you can get your building permit faster, which makes better incentive for developers to build in a way that's good for Salt Lake City and for our air, ultimately.
Hi, I'm Brian. I work for Salt Lake County. I was just really curious. We've heard a lot of options tonight. I'm curious, in the eastern half of the United States, they're having, all this snow and freezing cold, and they shut down, their government, their businesses, and everything because it's too dangerous for them to go outside. I was thinking, on red air days, it seems like we could do the same thing with federal, state, city, county government facilities. And I know there's the chances of losing money by closing those businesses, but, I think it'd be safer. People wouldn't need to be traveling, be out in the bad air. And honestly, I don't like going out in the air on red air days. And when on red air days at our facility, we offer like 25 cents to play basketball instead of $1 or whatever it normally is, because we don't, those kids are coming in and they're wanting to play sports, but the air's so bad we can't charge them full price for that. And I just feel like it'd be a great idea. I just like to hear what you guys think about it.
I think that's a creative idea, and I really appreciate that you bring your imagination to this forum, and it's something absolutely I think we can look into as a council.
And as a little tiny nugget of encouragement, I think your idea is such a great idea that other people are thinking that too. There's the Federal Department of Transportation has an office in every state, and their office here in Utah is directed by a fellow who's lived in Chicago and lived in other places where they've had pollution issues. He eventually became an asthma sufferer and moved to Utah, and he didn't like to go out in the red air days either. And being Department of Transportation, he didn't really want all of his employees driving into work and contributing to it either. So he asked for permission from the federal office to create a procedure that he could train his employees on, and they train on it throughout the year in their regular HR training sessions on telecommuting. And so there's only 17 people, the last I heard, in this office, and 16 of them, because of the jobs that they do, are able to telecommute. So they train on it, not just when the air is bad, but they train on it throughout the year so that when it does get to that point, they send out the email to everybody and people stay home. And, during certain years, that means they're working from home quite a bit. And the other encouraging piece of that is that there's a great deal of research and information that supports telecommuting as a really healthy and viable option for businesses. And our own Utah Department of Transportation has the TravelWise website, and they have more resources about travel, how to telecommute, how to do that in a workspace, and other ways to get around smartly. But I think telecommuting is one of those ways that a lot of the departments and divisions, both of state government and municipal government, could look at implementing on a much broader scale.
Including Salt Lake City.
I have, in one of the pages in here, it's talking about trolley cars coming back. Sugar House is going to be, I think, coming online soon in 15, I think, if this is how I read it. And then you're thinking about possibly doing it down in Salt Lake too. Okay, great. Has any thought or consideration ever crossed anybody's mind about the idea of using, like what the ski lifts are doing and getting it up and above? If you want to put something in, you might as well have it be something that is a pleasurable thing to go around and see. I remember thinking of going to Seattle just to see the monorail when I was a kid. Now I look at it now, it's just it's part of their transit system, but they made it look like a Disneyland ride. And maybe that's a little cheesy in one way, and we don't want to go that far, but the idea of getting off the ground is appealing to some people, and maybe it's something that will have application someplace in town.
So I love these ideas. The Sugarhouse streetcar line opened in December. So I don't know if we were ahead of schedule or your dates are off, but and we are, and Councilmember LaMaffa has really been a real leader in this. We are working right now on design for a downtown streetcar line as well. So monorails and getting above ground with transit or using cables. There are a whole bunch of different ways you can obviously get around by transit. And here's a general rule of thumb for cost. If it's $1 to build something, $1 one times however many times you want to do it, to build something on ground level, if you build something above ground, it's 5 times that cost. You've got to build all that structure, right, to support a transit system. And I should mention that as it relates to Seattle and the state of Washington said, oh, let's just build monorails all over the place. It never got built beyond what's in place now, going to the old World Fair site, because the costs were so high and the rate of return in terms of passengers was so low, it never got done. So monorail is great in certain applications. So you see them around, you could see them around airports, you see them at Disneyland, you see them for that one application in Seattle, but it has never really worked well as a transit system Surface rail can work, but so it's 5 times more above ground. And then if you go underground, and there are huge advantages to going underground, that's where the way all the subways work, right? It's 10 times more expensive as building it at the surface. So what you find the transit experts doing is saying, okay, what's going to be the most efficient, effective, cost-effective, and ridership usage effective type of transit that will work in the circumstances of any given place? And it turns out that for us, for a whole variety of reasons, and I could go into some of them, some of them would surprise you probably, that light rail for us right now is far and away the most effective way, cost efficient, and enabling people to gain access well, way for us to deal with the commuting public. Now for longer trips, we've got commuter rail, right, from Ogden and to Provo. And they have fewer stops and they go faster, but doesn't provide the same amount of service to as many people. So it's almost like looking at a road system when you're looking at transit. We've got little streets in our neighborhoods. That's kind of streetcars and buses. We've got major roads like State Street, and that's more like light rail. And then where we're traveling long distances, like freeways, we've got commuter rail. So we kind of have a couple of those that are doing pretty well. And it's the smaller neighborhood scale transit part of it that's really hurting.
You also mentioned gondolas or chairlifts.
Yeah, that's really where we get people out of the avenues when they get filled in.
Sure. And we're working on a transit master plan that's city-wide, and I think that our staff is going to explore every single option that's available. I'll also add that if a chairlift is in our future, it's possible to buy local. Doppelmayr, one of the world's biggest chairlift manufacturers, is just 4 miles west of here, out there in our industrial area.
I have a question. My name's Fred Avalar. I'm a student at the University of Utah. One of the things that I like about being a student there is I can use my card, my student ID card, to tap on and tap off of the transit system. I know they don't have anything like that at Salt Lake Community College. There's a discount for student bus passes, but they don't have free tap on, tap off capabilities like we do at the U. Is there anything in the works with Salt Lake Community College to make that a reality there?
I don't know. I'd suggest that those of you who are interested contact the community college. So a number of Salt Lake City provides passes for all of its employees, like the university, and there are a number of businesses that do as well for free. Some folks do discounted, as you've suggested, passes. I would think if the students and faculty and staff were to make that a high priority, that the administration might be responsive. So. The city spends for passes for all of its employees almost $750,000 a year. So it's really up to each institution. UTA has a program for businesses, larger institutions, to where they go through and do basically an analysis of where you are, how many people use or might use passes at the front end, and then they provide a discounted pass, and then it's up to the institution to then decide whether or not to pay for all of those passes like we do in Salt Lake City. The community college sounds like hasn't done that yet, but the state of Utah just decided to do it in the last few months for its employees.
And although it's not free, the Hive Pass that's available March 1st is it's 70% off, which is a deeper discount than seniors get. It's a deeper discount than disabled get for their monthly pass. It's a deeper discount than low-income people get. It's such a deep discount that it's cheaper than what Salt Lake City School District was able to negotiate for kids in Salt Lake that go to Salt Lake City schools. I think they're going to try to buy their passes from us when the program comes available. It really is. It's a great bargain, and it's pretty incredible that our staff could negotiate such a great deal.
UTA would be probably feel really badly if this didn't go out with some leveling. They negotiated this Hive Pass for Salt Lake City residents at a level that is equivalent to what a lot of the discount passes are. So actually, it may be because of the way school district pass is set up that maybe it would help for their kids to use a Hive Pass instead, the Salt Lake City Pass instead. But one of the sort of tougher negotiating things we needed to work out with UTA is how much they reduce their pass costs for all Salt Lake City residents. And the way they were able to rationalize that is we came up with an estimate of the number of people who would buy passes. So they would make up for the lost revenue by more people buying passes and using transit. And this is an experiment. It's a one-year experiment that UTA and we are trying. So we're hoping a lot of people will get out there and buy passes, because if they don't, it probably won't work, and then we're going to be back trying to figure out how we can see if there's a way to extend it. But what a lot of people don't realize with these passes and with the UTA system is that people say, why don't we just have free fares everywhere, right? Wouldn't that be cool? Well, 20% of UTA's revenues comes from fares. So if that revenue goes away because they're all free passes, UTA has to cut its service by 20% because they just don't have the revenues to run the buses and trains as much. So it's a trade-off for them, in a way they're like a business that way, and for any of us that we're that way in terms of when we provide services and trying to figure out what it costs. Thank you all, those of you who came, those of you who have stayed. Great questions, comments. We've got new ideas for us in terms of things we can do in the city, and I hope all of you will take advantage of the opportunity to contact us, contact your state representatives and the governor's office, and help us all get the actions we need to take to clean our air. So thank you all for the evening.